We're talking today with Mr. August Edema of Byron Center, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of Grand Valley State University. Mr. Edema, can you start by telling us a little bit about your own background? Were you born here in Byron Center?
I was born a mile and a half north of Byron Center.
All right. And what year was that?
1920.
Okay. And what did your family do?
Farming.
All right. And about how many acres were you farming, you think?
60.
Okay. And how many kids were in the family?
6.
Okay, that's a lot of people to feed off of 60 acres. Did you have any other source of income, or did your father do other stuff?
My father worked in the shop once in a while in the factory, Nichols and Cox. It was a hardwood flooring company.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, did you go through school all the way through high school, or did you leave earlier?
I went through the 8th grade.
Went through 8th grade. Then what did you do when you finished that?
Worked.
Okay. Were you doing farm work or shop work?
No, it was all farm work, yeah.
All right.
Different farmers.
Okay. Now, as you were, getting older, and it gets to be about 1940 or so, and there's trouble in Europe and this kind of thing, were you paying much attention to that, or were you just taking care of business and trying to make a living?
We didn't have any radio, very few radios, and no TV, so you didn't know what war was like. So you didn't pay too much attention to it.
And were you thinking that eventually the war might get to the United States and you might have to be in it?
I don't think we thought that far.
Okay. Now, do you remember how you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I remember Pearl Harbor. I remember where I was when they struck Pearl Harbor.
Okay, where were you?
I was at my dad-in-law's house.
And how did you learn about it? Did they have a radio, or?
They had a radio.
Okay. Now, when that happened, then did you start thinking about what you might be doing next, or?
We thought about the war then, because it struck pretty close to home.
Okay. Now, you had brothers who went into the military, right?
Yes, they went in after I did.
Okay, so you were the first. All right. Now, were you drafted?
I was drafted.
Okay. Now, when did that happen?
I was 20 years old.
Okay, so were you drafted then in 1940?
41,
early 41?
41, 42.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because but were you drafted before or after Pearl Harbor?
Afterwards.
After, so it's probably either end of 41 or beginning of 42 then.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, once you got your draft notice, where did you report to?
Board 42. It was in the, it was on Division Avenue. There was a ball field there.
Okay, Bigelow Field?
Pardon?
Was Bigelow Field there?
Bigelow Field.
Yeah. Okay. And then what did they have you do there? Just sign up, or?
We signed up, and there wasn't a lot of them. They called us. From there, we went to Kalamazoo, had our physical, was inducted the 17th day of October. We could come back home for 10 days to get our things in order.
Okay. And then where did you go from there?
Left downtown Grand Rapids at the train station, took a train to Battle Creek.
So you go to Fort Custer.
Fort Custer.
All right.
And we landed, and we got in Fort Custer on Halloween night.
All right. Now, what were you at Fort Custer for? Was that for testing or assignment, or?
They started us out there and where we should go to, what division or wherever.
Okay. And where did they send you?
I went to Camp Adair, Oregon. It's a brand new camp.
Okay, Camp Adair, Oregon. All right. What condition was the camp in when you got there?
Brand new.
Okay, but does that mean there was nothing there, or that there were nice new buildings?
And just the buildings were there. No streets, no sidewalks. It was all red clay.
All right. Now, before you went out to Camp Adair, had you ever taken a long trip like that before?
No, it took us 5 days to go there.
All right. So what was that like for you? Were you on a train then, or?
We was on the train.
Okay. And so what was that experience like, or what do you remember about riding out there?
I remember you couldn't talk to anybody. Pardon me. You couldn't talk to anybody. No matter who come up with the train, the MPs would be right there by the door.
So you couldn't talk to the people on the outside?
Right.
Okay. Did they feed you and have a place for you to sleep, or did you just sit up on the coaches?
You slept on the benches. They passed you a sandwich.
And you had 5 days of that?
Yeah. A cold box of cereal.
Okay. Now that you get out to the camp, how did they greet you when you got there?
Oh, they greeted us with open arms.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, how about the drill sergeants?
We had to get acquainted with the drill sergeants because this was a new deal. This was when the 96th Division started.
Okay, so that's a brand-new division.
It was a brand-new division, and what we call the drill sergeants was a cadre, and they all come from someplace else.
Okay, so some of them might have been regular Army, or at least people...
They were all regular Army.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had these... now, what kind of training did you do, or what sorts of...
There was combat infantry.
Okay, so what does that consist of?
Consists of maneuvers, different problems you'd work out in the field. At that time, the government leased, I don't know how many acres of wheat fields around there. That's where we trained on.
Okay. Now, did you do a lot of long marches and things like that?
We done a lot of marching.
Okay. Now, did you get weapons training there?
We had weapons training. We had, for us guys, it was just a rifle, bayonet training. Had a bayonet on the end of the rifle.
Okay. But they weren't training you with mortars or machine guns or things like that?
We wasn't in a machine gun because that was what they call heavy weapons.
Okay. So you were in a regular rifle company then?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, about how long did they have you there at Camp Adair?
Well, I happened to be fortunate. We were there quite a while because the original cadre moved on, and then they picked a cadre out of us guys. So we were training recruits for a while.
All right. Now, what rank were you at this point?
Staff sergeant.
Okay, so you made it up to sergeant. So how do you figure you were somebody who got picked to do that kind of thing?
Pardon me?
Why were you made a staff sergeant and made part of the cadre rather than somebody else?
I think you're more aggressive in training.
Okay. Now, were you a little bit older than a lot of the guys who were there?
No.
Okay. So they're mostly, you're about 22 or whatever at that time, and...
Yeah, I can tell you something pretty soon, but certain nationalities didn't get a rating.
All right. Now, the men in your division, where were they from? Were they from all over the place, or were a lot of them from Michigan or the Midwest?
They were we had them from all over, and then when we trained recruits, we got guys in there that was 45. The drafts used to pick them, they had to get somebody from each county. And a lot of these counties didn't have guys, that many. So they would pick older guys, guys with physical defects. When they would get down there for training, well, you could send them back home.
So now, how long did it take to get the kind of division up to strength then?
Oh, we got there in October of 42, and we left in 44. So.
Okay, so it took a while then. Now,
but we went up and down the coast. We were at Fort Lewis, Washington. We were Camp Fort Ord, California.
Now, did you spend long stretches of time in those places, or were you just there briefly on the way somewhere else?
We spent short periods of time. It was different training we was taking.
Okay. Now, what other kinds of training were you getting now? You'd had the basic rifleman's training. What else did you get?
Well, we took amphibious training.
Okay. Now, what was that like?
Well, if you can't swim, it was kind of ugly.
All right. But what do they have you do? How did the training process work for that?
Well, we was in a boat, and you hit the beach, and then you get out of the boat and see how fast you get out, and if there's a machine gun facing you.
Okay. Now, so these were the landing craft, the little...
Pardon me?
Were these landing craft then that you were landing in with the door on the front that flops down and...
Door open in front.
Okay.
Boatsman sitting in the back.
Now, did you have to practice climbing into those things from a larger ship?
We didn't.
Okay. So, I mean, you actually loaded up in the little landing craft, went out there, and then came back?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think there was water deep enough there for a big ship.
Okay. So where were you doing that kind of practicing then? Was that at Fort Lewis or?
But the first practice we got is when we was making the first wave to go into Leyte. We never was on a rope ladder before.
Okay. But you were on the boats before, though. That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, while you were based out there on the West Coast, did you get much of a chance to get off base or go into town or meet the civilians?
I forget what it was. Every so often you got 30 days.
Well, Well, if we got 30 days, did you go home?
15, yeah, we could come home if you had the money.
So did you manage to get back home to visit before you shipped out?
Yes, I had my wife with me. My dad-in-law wanted to see my wife.
Okay. Now, when did you get married?
I got married just before we went in, September 18.
42? Or before you went
I
overseas?
think it was 41 we got
41?
married.
Okay. All right. Now, did your wife come out to Oregon, or did she stay back in Michigan and just visited you?
When we got situated, she came out, yeah.
Okay. And so what kind of accommodations did you have? Did she live on base, or were you living in an apartment
Well,
off
we had
base?
to have an apartment off base. There was nothing for married couples on base.
Okay. Now, were there a lot of other wives there?
Yes.
Okay. And what was she doing while you were training?
They would try to get jobs here and there.
And did she manage to get any work?
Once in a while. There was a lot of people.
Yeah.
Our rent was $35 a month for upstairs apartment, and we made $35 a month.
So how did you get by? I mean, did she get enough work that you could get food, or?
Well, my wife made enough to
And I guess.
buy groceries. Of course, I could eat on the base.
Right. Yeah. But no. Do you have any kids yet, or was it just you and her? Okay. All right. Then, as they started moving you around to different bases, did she follow around with you then?
She did.
Okay. And then when you finally did head overseas, at that point, did she go back to Michigan, or?
She went back to Michigan, and the Army sent the wives back first class on the train.
Okay, so better than the accommodations you had coming out then.
Right, and a lot better than any time we rode on the train.
All right. Now, when did they ship you out to go overseas?
We left at Oakland, California in July of 42, 44.
44. Yeah. All right. What kind of ship did they put you on?
Big old tub, no air conditioning. If you were smart, you got the top bunk. That's where the air was.
Okay.
You can imagine about 3,000 people on the ship.
Now, was this a converted liner, or was it built as a troop ship, or?
I have no idea. They were building ships like crazy in those days.
Yeah, but 3,000 is a lot to put on one ship. So most of the Liberty ships and things like that were smaller than that, but they had troop transports. They converted other things. But by the time you were there, it was just a troop ship?
This was a troop ship, yeah.
Now, how many bunks did they have stacked up on each other?
5 high.
All right. And what deck were you on, or how high? Were you above the water line or below it?
It was right on the torpedo line. First, when we went to Hawaii.
Okay. Now, did they put you on a different ship at Hawaii, or did you have a layover
Oh,
there?
yes, we was in Hawaii for, I would say, a couple of months.
Okay. Now, what did you do while you were in Hawaii?
We'd done some more training,
Did you get any more amphibious practice, or were you?
more amphibious practice. And they loaded us up there, and we went down to New Guinea, never got off, and then we started back up. But I think we picked up troops at New Guinea to come up with us.
Okay. Now, were you part of the original landing in Leyte then? Were you?
I was on the first wave.
Okay. Now, describe the trip up there. Did you have any idea what was going on while you were sailing up from New Guinea, or?
No.
When did you find out where you were going?
The day we climbed over the net.
Okay. All right. Did men have any trouble getting into the boats?
Kind of choppy.
Okay.
Prior to getting in the boat, they had what they called a Last Supper. And this was about 2 o'clock in the morning. And everybody could order what they wanted. Nobody ate it. Didn't feel like it.
All right. At this point, I don't know, what did you know about the fighting that had been going on in the Pacific, or what it was like? Did you have any idea? Okay. And what did they tell you about what to expect when you landed on Leyte?
Not much.
Okay. Did you have a particular mission or assignment? Did you know what you were supposed to do when you got on the beach?
We knew what we were supposed to do, but we wasn't that well organized when we got there, because we was out in the ocean for a while. We unloaded off the big ship and went down on the nets into the smaller crafts. And then we made a big circle.
Okay.
And kept on that circle constantly until there was enough boats out there. And then he would tell you to head for shore.
Okay. Now, before you landed, was there a naval bombardment going on or air
We didn't
attacks?
have any by us, no.
Okay, so you didn't hear any ships or see anything like that going
It
on?
was more or less kind of like a surprise, I think.
Okay. Now, what was the shoreline like where you were landing?
We landed on the shore. It was a good shore, a good sandy beach. But we didn't hit the water because we were the first ones on the beach. The second time the guy come in with a load, he didn't go so far because he couldn't get off. The boat would be stuck up there.
Okay, so you're landing, so your first way, they go up on the beach, and the idea is a landing craft can back itself out and go, but he got too far up, and so he was stuck.
Yeah.
All right. Now, where were you on the landing craft? Were you up front, and you were going to lead the men out because you were...
I was right in the front.
Okay, now were you a platoon sergeant by this time?
Pardon?
Were you a platoon sergeant, or were
Yes.
you... Okay. So you've got to lead the men forward. The door flops open on the beach there.
Two of the soldiers unhooked the hooks on each side, and when that door dropped down, you didn't know what was out there.
Okay. So what did you do when the door dropped?
We hit the beach and got a place secure as quick as we could.
Did you run across the beach and try to get off of there quickly, or did you hit the dirt and wait for fire?
I can remember we run across, and as quick as we got up the beach a ways, we dug a hole.
Okay.
And we dug a hole that was full of water.
All right. Now, when you landed, was there any enemy opposition?
There was. The landing craft next to us never made it on shore. There was a mortar shell hit right in the center of it.
Okay. Now, were you taking rifle fire or machine gun fire when you came in?
We had some machine gun fire, but very little rifle fire.
Okay. So maybe not so many people actually defending the beach there.
I think what the ship's done before we got there, they knocked them out.
Okay. So could you see things like the shell craters or places where stuff had been blasted, or was that hard to tell?
We never took notice of that, no.
Okay. And actually, with the sand and the jungle and so forth, it might have been hard unless everything was gone. Yeah.
We had, you don't know what it's like to be in the jungle. That's what it is.
Okay. So how can you describe that if you want to?
It's hot, about
Okay.
90 degrees, a lot of humidity, and monkeys squealing, birds chirping. Drive you crazy.
Now, how far forward could you see when you were in that jungle? Was there a lot of vegetation low down that blocked your view?
Didn't see, I doubt if you could see from here to the street.
Okay. So then, when you landed then, did you kind of go into the edge of the jungle and dig in?
The jungle wasn't right on the edge of the beach, no.
Okay. So what was at the edge of the beach?
That was more or less blown away.
Okay. So there was kind of cleared, effectively it was cleared ground because of the bombardment.
Yeah.
And was that where you dug in first?
That's where we dug in first.
Okay. So you had some kind of field of fire in front of you, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
We wasn't on there long, and then we put up the American flag. The ship stopped shooting or shelling, and then it was night.
Okay. Now, did you have kind of full regiment or division landed by the time you got to the end of the day, do you think?
Pardon?
How large a unit were you with at that point? Did you have a whole regiment there, or the division, or what?
Oh, the division wasn't there, no.
Okay.
I would say we had probably 2 regiments.
Okay. So you had about half of the division, basically, at least of the combat soldiers. Okay. Now, how long did you stay there along the shoreline, or?
Not move right out.
Okay. Now, as you moved inland, what happened to your unit?
Well, it was disorganized all the way through. But we made it.
Okay. What was your job sort of as a platoon sergeant? What did you have to do to help keep
You
things
lead your
going?
men, you don't chase them in. You go ahead of them.
And were you facing a lot of opposition there as you were going in, or was the jungle more of a problem than the Japanese?
We would run opposition. It would be real heavy at times. And then there was times to be very little, just the snipers. But there was always something.
Yeah. Now, when you ran into some serious opposition, what did you do about that, or how did
When we ran into some real opposition, we called back for artillery. We had artillery kind of level things off for us.
Okay. And did you have artillery spotters up there with you who were
No,
calling
there
things
was
in?
a Piper Club pillion that flew
Okay.
as a spotter.
All right. And so from the front line, you didn't have any communication with the pilot. He was talking to people farther back?
Just on a crank phone.
Okay. But could you actually communicate with him from there?
Well, you couldn't, not anybody couldn't. You had to go through the channels.
Right. And how effective was the artillery when you called it in?
Artillery,
Did it work?
it took some of us, some of them. I see one night it landed short. Took out about 12 guys, just like that, of our own guys.
Right. Okay. Now, how long do you think you were fighting your way through the jungle there? I mean, you sort of...
Well, I went in about the 20th day of
October, maybe?
October.
Yeah.
And I got hit the 13th day of November.
So then you're pretty much in action much of the time in those 3
We
weeks.
was in combat all the time.
Okay. By the time you got hit, how much of your platoon was left?
Oh, about half.
And what strength did you start at?
Pardon?
How many men did you have when you went in?
We had a full platoon. I think there was 50 guys, 30 guys.
All right. Now, can you describe what went on there in the action where you got hit? What was going on there and what were you doing?
Well, we ran across the island, and you don't just, every night you dig in, you dig a hole you can stand in,
Right.
and the other, and then you make 2 holes off to each side, trenches, and these people can lay in there and sleep. You take turns sleeping.
Right. Okay. And then were you attacking and moving forward then? I mean, or were you being attacked?
That next day, that place, some places like that, we would get where we can clean our weapons and get set for another attack.
Now, as you were doing this advancing and moving forward, did the Japanese counterattack? Did they try to get up into your lines or make much trouble?
Twice they did, that I can remember, because they were shooting at us from my left side, and I called back and I said, "Who's on my left?" And they said, "C Company." And I said, "Well, tell them to quit shooting at us." Then they called me back and they said, "Well, C Company's not there." Well, I said, "Who is?" And they didn't know. Well, it was the Japanese.
Okay. Were they there in force or were they there with a few snipers?
We don't know how big a force they had because we wiped them out with mortars and machine guns.
Okay. So you had that kind of thing happen a couple of times. Now, when you were attacking the Japanese, did they have any kind of fortifications or were they just foxholes and trenches and things?
They had bunkers. They had, well, there was a couple of times when we took a bunker that was a headquarters.
Right. Were you able to get in and take a look at what was in there?
Yes, we did, yeah.
So what kind of things do you find in a
Well, they had some antique kind of communications, but they were there to stay. I mean, that was their headquarters, and they didn't figure they was ever going to get out of there. The way we got them is they were in a hole with a cover over the top, and they had 2 trenches to way to get out.
Right.
And they had ventilation on top. We dropped grenades down there, and that's the way we got them out.
All right. Now, they probably weren't planning on having you get quite that
They
close either.
didn't figure it was going to get that close.
Okay. Well, were there forward positions that you had fought through to get there, or did you just find a hole in the lines and show up there?
We happened to find them, that's the way it was. And then you back off and figure out how you're going to take them.
Yeah, because you don't have, World War I style continuous trench lines and things like that. You have a lot of individual positions and kind of scattered in the jungle.
You tried to keep a line because you want to know who was in the front of you, who was in the back, and on each side of you.
But the Japanese must not have been able to quite do that.
No. Well, they were there a long time, They had holes dug. They had their machine gun set up to where all they had to do was pull the string if they heard a noise.
Okay. Now, your family has kind of shown me stuff that told a little bit about what happened on the day you got hit. And among other things, you also earned a Bronze Star in the middle of all of that. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there and what you were doing?
When?
I think it was November 13th or there right at the end.
We didn't figure this. We didn't figure that we were surrounded, but we were. And we were going back after chow. And the squad I had going back with me, they took off. And when I got up to them, they were down. I said, "What's going on?" They said, "They're shooting at us." I said, "You go if I go?" And they said, "Yeah." I took off, but I didn't go very far.
All right. Now, did you manage to at least get them out of there? Or did they get you out of there? Or?
They got me out. But when I got hit, I had morphine for my squad. You have that in your shirt pocket.
Right.
So right away you give yourself a shot to keep yourself out of shock.
Right.
And then I had a colonel, he was from Muskegon. He come up and they tell me that he put a note on my shirt, "Do not amputate."
Okay.
And he gave me a shot. And then the medic got there. So I had 3 shots of morphine. I didn't care what much it did.
Right, yeah. Probably not much of a clue what's going on at that point. Now, after that, I mean, how long were you laid up?
How long?
Yeah.
Oh, it's until I got out, really. I was 100% disabled when I got out.
Now, where were you hit?
I was hit in the hand, the leg right through the groin,
Ouch.
and through the neck.
Okay. Now, how long do you have to stay in a hospital?
We was in the hospital, well, we laid up on the front because there was no helicopters in them days.
Right.
You had to have people carry you back. They carried us back to the landing to an open spot. There an ambulance picked us up. And then he brought us to a clearing spot. And that was a hospital. They laid you on a cot. They took your shears and they cut your shoestrings and your pants and they cut up your sleeves and just folded it. You can be in there from the 20th day of October until the 13th day of November. You got a lot of blood and a lot of dirt. You never took a bath. See?
Right. Did you ever get to shave during those 3 weeks?
Nope.
Yeah.
So this clothes, they just folded off and they put you in a sheet.
Right. Okay, and then how long were you in the field hospital?
I was in the hospital, I don't know just how long, on the Philippines. The hospital they had there was right on the beach, and it was in the mud.
Right.
In fact, while I was there, the commander made all the lady nurses move, all female. Just have men nurses there because they were in the mud up to their knees. And then from there, they took us up to Guam. It was in the hospital there, in a tent.
Okay. At least it wasn't so muddy.
Pardon?
It wasn't muddy anyway.
There was a lot of mud there in the Philippines, but on Guam, there was a nice base.
Yeah. Okay, now how long did they have you on Guam?
1 month.
Okay, and then where'd you go from there? Back to the States or somewhere else?
I went to Hawaii. I was in Guam a little over a month, probably 45 days. I left Guam the last day of the year. And then just when we got into Hawaii again, it was the 1st of January.
Okay, and then did they have you in a hospital in Hawaii, or did they send you back? Okay.
They leave you there 30 days to build your condition up to where you can travel.
Right.
And then they put you on a plane. Well, I was there 30 days, and they put us on a plane, and we headed for California.
And then did they keep you in California for a while, or did they just discharge you?
30 days.
Okay.
And then they put us on a plane to come home, or to come to Indiana. But we only could fly in the daytime.
Right.
Never flew at night. They always was able to see the ground wherever they went.
Okay. Now, when did you get to Indiana, do you think?
Camp Adair, that was a base in Oregon. Camp Atterbury, Indiana, that was where the hospital was, just outside Indianapolis.
Okay. So at this point, you're still officially recuperating from the injuries? They haven't discharged you yet?
I was still, what they call a litter patient. They carried you wherever you went.
Okay. So you still couldn't walk at this point?
No.
All right. How long was it before you could walk?
That all came in Hawaii, or in Camp Edema.
Okay. Now, when do they finally discharge you?
45.
Okay. Was it before the war was actually over or a little bit after? Okay. Now,
Well, really, war was over because they let me come home for 90 days. They wanted to see how you healed up.
right.
And when we go back to Guam, there was a ticket, of course, on my shirt, no amputation. So my hand was a mess. So they put maggots in my hand, eat the dead flesh away,
Okay.
put a cast on it. And when that was cleaned up, then they started skin graft. But they was a little bit too quick, and the gangrene was still in there, and then the skin graft fell off too.
Oh, that's kind of a reminder of just sort of where medicine was at that point. And
At that point, your skin graft was, they would cut you in each side of the stomach, and they'd make a flap. And then they would put your hand on that flap, and it had to be there until it grew.
right.
Then they squeeze your stomach together with stitches.
So how long was it before you felt like yourself again?
Well, you felt like yourself every day. You weren't
In
dead.
terms of being able to be up and around and doing things again. Now, let's kind of go back to the phase there in the Philippines. While you were there, did you see much of anything of the local population? Or were they all staying away because you were on the front most of the time?
We did. As we was moving across the island, certain tribes would come in back of us. And they would take the village that we took. There was one time that we let them go ahead of us and pick the rice because we was going through that rice field.
When they went forward, did the Japanese shoot at them or just?
They were Filipinos.
Okay, but I mean, when the Filipinos went forward, though, they're going ahead of you.
We watched them.
Okay.
We had guards out in front of them.
Okay, so they were reoccupying their own villages, basically, as.
They always said they were at their village. We didn't know. We couldn't understand them.
Okay.
One thing about it, the men never worked over there. Not when, at World War II. Women did all the work.
Let's see. Are there other particular events from your service career, things that kind of you tend to think back to or remember that we haven't mentioned here yet?
Well, the Filipinos, when they had caribous that done their work for them, that was their animal.
A water buffalo or?
Pardon?
Water buffalo or?
Yeah. And when we would shoot one accidentally, we'd put a wire around at night and fasten flares to that, and if a caribou got through, well, he didn't live. And the Filipinos would cut him up and slices and throw him on the roof. That's the way they dried it.
Okay.
Full of flies.
All right. The other things that you remember about different parts, things either out of the training camp or out of the trips in different places or being in the Philippines?
Hawaii was nice. We went to Schofield Barracks, and I understand they're still there.
Okay. Now, so when did you finally go home?
We come across from California, and we stopped at different hospitals for the night. And then they loaded us back up. And we got in, I don't know, remember the date. I know it was cold. It was in February when we got. And we stayed there for a while. We started healing up a little bit. Then they said I could come home for 90 days if I had a doctor to take care of me at home. So the doctor here in Byron Center, he took care of me. Made sure that I was healing right.
And then When you were well enough to work, what kind of work did you do?
I helped my dad-in-law on the farm.
And then did you go on and do anything else in addition to that, or change jobs?
No, I kind of stuck with that for about 10 years. Then I was told that I shouldn't be farming anymore, so I went to real estate.
Okay. So who told you you shouldn't be a farmer anymore?
My legs were swollen up in my hand.
Yeah, that's the wrong kind of work then. Yeah. Okay. And is that what you wound up having a career in then at that point, or did you did you then basically stay in real estate then for a long time?
I had a broker's license for 30 years. It doesn't say, and I sold all that time, but
All right. And how many kids did you have?
I have 4 boys.
Did any of them go into the service in turn?
The oldest one went to the Guards.
Okay. And let's say you've got a grandson in the service now, is that right?
I have a grandson in the service now.
And is
in Polk, Louisiana.
Okay. And has he had to go to Iraq or go to Afghanistan or any of those places?
He's the only son. They say he doesn't have to go out of the States if he don't want to.
Okay. Now, to look back on the whole thing now, how do you think your time in the service affected you? I mean, aside from just the physical stuff that's followed you around since then, did it change you as a person, do you think?
I don't think so.
Okay. You kind of knew yourself going in and...
Just take it every day that's come.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.